All she had wished for was a peaceful flight, a window seat, a couple of hours of calm over the clouds. But peace was never her destiny. For her, safety could slide into danger with one glance, one whisper, one misinterpretation. At some point between takeoff and landing, her quiet found itself a target, and her skin found itself a justification. What happened next was not only humiliating, it was frightening, and it left everyone aboard wondering the same question. How is this still possible today? Flying was nothing new to her. She had done it before. Business travel, visiting relatives, a temporary escape from the hubbub of daily life. She walked with quiet self-assurance, a woman who had fought hard to achieve what she had. This morning, she packed minimally, put on her favorite sweater, and reminded herself that this flight would be mere routine travel. But the thing is, she never ceased paying attention. The gapes at the gate. The quiet change in pitch when her ticket was scanned. The manner in which people appeared surprised to find her standing in the same queue. She just dismissed it, as always. Sinking into her seat, she allowed herself to catch her breath. High above the clouds, she considered, there would at last be serenity. But what she did not know was that this flight would challenge her in ways she never dreamed. And the question posed over the intercom would alter everything. At first, things were fine. The rumble of engines, the soft scramble of passengers settling into seats, the soft clink of seatbelts clicking into place. She opened her eyes, relishing a rare moment of peace. But tranquility in her world never lasted too long. It began small, barely perceptible to anyone. The fellow across the aisle tilting just enough to gawk. The flight attendant's courteous smile that fell short of her eyes. A hushed voice 2 rows back, and then, stifled laughter. She reminded herself not to respond. She had learned years before that to speak out could equate to discomfort turned into peril. Then the second look from the attendant, and this one was piercing. A brief exchange of words with the captain. A discreet nod in her direction. Her stomach was in knots. Something was underway, and it involved her. A few minutes passed before the intercom crackled. The captain's voice, steady but with an undercurrent of urgency, cut through the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, is there anyone on board with military flight experience? Any fighter pilots? Gasps traveled like fire. Passengers turned their heads, their eyes scanning, seeking, and for some reason they all came to her. Why her? She didn't wear a uniform. She wasn't wearing anything that indicated a function other than being a passenger. And yet, suspicion clung to her like a dark cloud. It wasn't the captain who designated her. It was the assumption of those who were in her midst. A man muttered too loudly, "She seems suspicious." Another huddled his armrest, as if preparing for attack. The whispers mounted, integrating into something louder, more substantial. Questions unspoken but felt like accusations. Why is she so composed? Why did she sleep? Why her skin, her being, seemed misplaced in their comfort? The flight staff came, slow and methodical, every eye in the cabin following their movement. Her chest constricted. She had not done anything wrong, yet she bore the burden of shame on her shoulders. It was not about evidence, it was about perception. "Ma'am, could you step with us for a second?" The politeness rang false, but the underlying note was unmissable, a command. She rose to her feet, legs weighed down, as if bearing not only her own body, but the weight of a history that never allowed her to breathe freely. Passengers yanked their arms in as she pushed past, some leaning away, others leaning in, as though nearness to her might validate their worst fears. She attempted to keep her head up, but the question gnawed at her brain. Would she exit this plane with honor? Or would this be another tale the world would know too late? And just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, the captain's voice came back, harder now. "For the safety of all passengers, we require immediate cooperation." The cabin lapsed into charged silence. Everyone watched and waited for what she would do next. Everyone judged. She saw then This was not merely a misunderstanding. This was a test of what she was permitted to be in their minds, and whether she would be heard at all. She was in the narrow aisle, all eyes on her as if she were guilty already. The cabin seemed tighter, claustrophobic, the stale air weighing down on her like a burden she couldn't discard. The flight attendant's words were neutral, but her hand floated too near the intercom. One misstep, one loud voice, and this would spiral out of control. Travelers whispered more loudly now. Terms such as terrorist, threat, and dangerous hung in the air like knives. She ached to cry out, to remind them she was a mother, a daughter, a career person who had merely stepped onto a plane like everyone else. But then none of that mattered. All they noticed was the color of her skin, and all they knew was fear. Her heart pounded as two staff members took a step closer, their bodies positioned like shields. She saw a glimpse of a man in the distance, phone lifted, recording. Another passenger drew their child closer, as if she were some sort of monster. Shame seared through her, more vicious than fear. This wasn't an annoyance. It was a public hearing without proof, without compassion. And then the captain's words, cutting and absolute. "For safety of this flight, we must have her off immediately," hung in the air. Off? For what offense? She had not spoken out of turn. She had not transgressed a single regulation. Her sole offense was being in a world that still managed to label her as hazardous. Her eyes welled up with tears, but she would not let them fall. If she cracked now, they would take it as evidence. If she resisted, they would take it as assault. She was cornered in a no-win decision. Remain quiet and be deleted, or revolt and be annihilated. And before the crew could grab her arm, the question hit her chest like a hammer. Was today the day that her name would be another headline the world argued about once it was too late? They removed her from the plane that day. Not in handcuffs, not on formal charges, but with something heftier. Humiliation. She made her way down the tight aisle as passengers averted their eyes, some uncomfortably, others silently pleased, all as her dignity slid away with each step. By the time her feet hit firm ground, she knew she had been branded. Not as a passenger, not as a female, but as a threat that never was. The airline described it as a misunderstanding. The captain had said it was procedure. But for her, there was nothing procedural about being deemed guilty without cause. That stroll along the jet bridge wasn't an exit. It was a reminder of just how rapidly the world will turn suspicion into punishment and skin color into a weapon against you. She took that moment with her long after the plane ride had ended. The shame, the anger, the wondering how easily it was possible for strangers to take her safety away just because of who she was. And she wasn't the only one. Her experience wasn't the first. It wouldn't be the last, because this wasn't just about one woman on one flight. It was about each and every time someone is belittled, questioned, or treated as less than human for something they never had a choice in. It was about the quiet fights that are had every day, often unnoticed, often in denial. So the question isn't if this will repeat. The question is, when it does, will someone rise up? Or will silence continue to write the same tale, again and again?